If you're a certain age, you probably remember when adult onset diabetes ceased to be a disease that anybody talked about. So what happened there? We had type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease. It's typically diagnosed in children. And then we had adult onset, and that was to differentiate between the type 1, the childhood onset, and adult onset was a type of diabetes that was found in adults, of course, and typically in older decades, 40s, 50s, probably when I was a kid, more 50s and 60s, and it got younger and younger and younger. And then in the 1990s, they changed the name because there were so many children getting adult onset diabetes that they had to call it type 2 diabetes. And so we're so used to hearing type 2, but it wasn't always that way. And there's actually another disease I'm going to talk about tomorrow that we had to change the name of as well. But let's stick with this. So with the diabetes, we found that more and more children were developing it, hence the change in name. And the fact that the younger you're diagnosed with it, the harder it is to manage. So that's what I want to talk about today, is that, first of all, type 2 diabetes, and I discuss this with patients all the time, and they're quite surprised to learn that it's a reversible disease, and it absolutely is. When it's gone on too long, left uncontrolled, it's absolutely devastating. You can go blind, you can lose kidney function, you can have pieces of your body removed because you're, absolutely getting gangrene in your feet and toes and legs. And I mean, it's not anything you would want for your worst enemy, but it's reversible, and it's not too difficult. And I've definitely had discussions with doctors before who are more primary care and say, okay, we know this is reversible, right? I mean, there's been studies of hundreds of thousands of people. It's not even up for argument whether it is a reversible disease or not. And I was like, so why don't you talk to your patients about that, like what it would take to reverse it versus only offering medication? And one for one, doctors will tell me, this is not in my field of functional medicine, but more in the traditional conventional medicine model. And they'll say, because it takes work and nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. That's what they say. And when a patient comes to see us and we're discussing it, I was like, maybe you don't want to do it. But wouldn't you like to know it's an option that you could completely reverse this disease and not have these horrible, life-threatening future, just a miserable, miserable future, because, you just didn't know. Nobody cared enough to tell you that this was a reversible disease and there's something you can do about it. Now, I've had patients sit in front of me and just say, I just want the drug. I'm not disciplined. I don't want to change my diet. I was like, great, fine. This is not the place for you. This is not the clinic for you. And I can tell you, we're very adamant about that. We're straight shooters. We'll tell you what it's going to take. And if you absolutely don't want to do that, then there's plenty of conventional doctors that will give you medication and do that route with you. And I'm not saying that concurrently you can't be on medication while doing the root cause medicine route, because you absolutely can. And hopefully we just get you better and better and better, so you need less and less medication. So we do that all the time. But if someone is adamant about, listen, I like being sedentary, I don't want to get off the couch, I don't want to change my diet, then they're just not a good candidate for our program, because we are very proud of our success rate, and we care about that when it comes to each and every one of our patients. So what are we missing? And I've mentioned a few of the issues, and that is sedentary lifestyle, poor diet low in fiber, high in processed foods, high in artificial sweeteners. Interesting study. It's actually been out for quite some time. Saccharin is something that raises your insulin. So we think about, with diabetes, avoiding simple sugar, avoiding especially high fructose corn sweeteners, but really all the refined sugars you really want to avoid, because it raises your glucose and that raises insulin. But studies are showing that saccharin, which of course is the non-sugar alternative, one of them, also does this. And that's something that diabetics really need to know if they're using diet sweeteners and thinking, you know, this is good for me and better than sugar. In the case of saccharin, really not. Also, highly processed foods that don't have a high sugar content, they're just highly processed, will also raise insulin. So, you know, it's not hard what we need to do, and it's not something, it's not like a list of 40 different things, but we do need to eat real food. We need our fruits and vegetables. We need our nuts and seeds. You can look at what a Mediterranean diet is. It's got fish, it's got olive oil, it's got a little bit of alcohol. Try to keep it to a very little bit or none at all, based on new research. But active, you know, you look at the long-lived people across the planet, and they're active. They're walking, they're working, they're, you know, they're absolutely, doesn't have to be the gym, you know, but they're just active. They're having an active lifestyle, and that's very, very key. And then, of course, the obesity rate, we're seeing up to 20% of our kids are obese, and that's why we're seeing type 2 diabetes. Used to be called adult onset. That's why we're seeing it in our youth, because of the obesity epidemic in children, the sedentary lifestyle of children, children being fed terrible, terrible food that shouldn't even be called food because it's so refined and high in sugar. So what else did I want to mention to you? Actually, that was it. So I covered all my points, and you know, it's just important that it's silly to have the tools and know how to reverse a disease that's killing so many Americans, and not know. So hopefully you know somebody that you can share this with, and let them know it's a reversible disease, because I'm surprised sometimes how many people don't know that type 2 diabetes is reversible. We're not talking about type 1, that's an autoimmune disease. That's different. You were born with a pancreas that's insufficient in making insulin, and you know, that's a very different situation. We're talking about type 2, meaning this came upon you over life due to abuse of your pancreas with these bad lifestyle habits, but it's something that can be reversed. So if your health is not the way you want it to be, please reach out. That's why we're here, and I'll see you tomorrow.